My boss had been grooming me to take over the entire company until I found a video on his computer of him arguing fiercely with my mom, claiming he couldn't possibly be my biological father. I stood frozen in Marcus Chen's office, my hand still on his mouse. The video paused on their angry faces. My mother's Masiri or streaked cheeks. Marcus's finger pointed accusingly. The team's amp showed this was from 15 years ago, when I was just 13. But here is no way she's mine, Diane. The timing doesn't work and you know it. Marcus's voice had thundered through the speakers before I frantically lowered the volume. I shouldn't have been in his office alone. I shouldn't have opened that oddly named folder on his desktop. But he'd asked me to grab some files for our presentation while he handled an emergency call, and there it was, Diane Final, my mother, my mentor, my whole life suddenly in question. For 5 years, I'd been Marcus's proto-rady at Chen Innovations, the promising young marketing executive he'd personally selected from a pool of candidates and fast-tracked through the company. The future of the firm, as he'd called me at last month's board meeting. Was this why some guilt-driven obligation to his ex-girlfriend's daughter? The sound of voices in the hallway snapped me back to reality. I quickly closed the video and reopened the presentation files I was supposed to be reviewing. When Marcus returned, I smiled like my world hadn't just imploded. Sorry about that, Olivia, he said, straightening his tie. Where were we? I met his eyes dark brown with flecks of gold, nothing like my hazel ones. Had I ever actually thought we looked alike? Had I imagined that people sometimes mistook us for father and daughter? The Jensen account, I said smoothly, my heart hammering. I was thinking we should emphasize the sustainability angle. He nodded approvingly. Awen's one step ahead. That's why you are my successor, his project, but not his daughter. Later that night, I sat in my apartment staring at a photo of my dad, the man who raised me, who died when I was 16. Dark hair, hazel eyes like mine. Mom always said I was his spitting image. Had that been a deliberate lie or just a convenient coincidence? My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Great work today. Ready to sign the meet her agreement tomorrow. Once it's official, we start transitioning my clients to you. The career opportunity of a lifetime. The culmination of years of hard work, all possibly built on a lie. Texty back, can't wait, with a thumbs up. Nick then immediately called my mother. Hey sweetie, what's up? Her voice was casual, normal. Mom, I said slowly, I need to ask you something about Marcus Chen. The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. 5 years earlier, I was just another marketing graduate with a decent portfolio and big dreams. The Chen Innovations internship program had over 2,000 applicants for 12 spots. When I got the acceptance email, I screamed so loudly my roommate thought I was being attacked. The first time I met Marcus Chen was during orientation week. He strode into the conference room where we interns sat nervously fiddling with our brand new company lanyards. Welcome to Chen Observations, he said. One of you sitting here today will eventually take my place as CEO. His gaze had swept over the room, pausing briefly on me, or so I'd thought. Now I wondered if he'd known exactly who I was from the beginning. The internship was brutal 70-hour weeks, impossible deadlines, projects that seemed designed to break us. By month 3, 4 interns had quit. By month 6, only 5 of us remained. When year-end evaluations came, I ranked first. Marcus personally extended my contract, moving me from intern to junior associate. You remind me of myself at your age, he told me, hungry, determined. He became my mentor in every sense of the word, weekly one-on-ones, where he'd critique my work with merciless precision, lunch meetings where he'd share war stories from his early career. He started bringing me into client meetings, letting me lead parts of the presentation, trusting my instincts on campaign strategies. By year 3, people around the office had started calling me Miai Marcus. I took it as a compliment. Your father would be proud, my mom said when I told her about my latest promotion. Had there been something guarded in her expression, a slight tension in her voice? I couldn't remember clearly now. The phone call after I found the video was short and terse. I can't talk about this now, Mom, said her voice hushed. Can't or won't? I pressed Olivia. Please, not over the phone. I am flying to Boston next weekend. We'll talk then. You knew I was working for him all this time and never said anything. It's complicated. Marcus and I have history. Yes, but it's not what you think. Then what is it? Is he my father? A long pause. Number he's not then. Why I have to go. We'll talk Saturday. I promise I'll explain everything. After hanging up, I paced my apartment, mind erasing. If Marcus wasn't my father, why had he singled me out? Did he know who my real father was? Had my entire career been built on some weird favor to my mother? The next morning I arrived at work early. Marcus's office was still dark, but Sheila, his executive assistant, was already at her desk. Morning superstore, she said cheerfully. Hey Sheila, quick question. How long have you worked for Marcus? Going on 18 years now? Why 18 years? Long enough to have known about whatever happened between Marcus and my mother? Just curious about company history. Did you ever meet my mom, Diane Porter? She might have been around before I started. Sheila's typing paused. Her smile remained fixed, but something cautious entered her eyes. Your mom? I don't think so, honey. Why would I have? Her lie was so smooth I might have believed it if I hadn't seen the video. That confirmed it. Whatever had happened between Marcus and my mother wasn't just personal history. It was something people at the company knew about and were instructed not to discuss with me. When Marcus arrived, he was carrying 2 coffee cups. He handed me 1 vanilla latte, my favorite, ready for the big day. He seemed so normal, so genuine in his enthusiasm for my career. Could all of that be fake? Actually, I said I was hoping we could talk about something first. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. Rain check. The Tokyo team needs me on an emergency call. Let's catch up this afternoon. As he walked away, I noticed him texting rapidly. By the time I reached my office, I had a message from my mother. Please don't say anything to Marcus until we talk. Here is more at stake than you know. When I was 7, I asked my mother why I didn't have any baby pictures before 6 months old. She told me there had been a house fire that destroyed the early albums. At 12, I questioned why we never visited my father's parents. She explained they had disowned him for marrying her. These explanations made sense at the time. Now every childhood memory felt suspect. The days after discovering the video dragged endlessly. Marcus was suddenly swamped with meetings, our scheduled one-on-one postponed. Twice I could have confronted him directly, marched into his office and demanded answers, but something held me back. Perhaps the same instinct that helps prey animals stay very still when predators are near. I needed facts before accusation, information before confrontation. After work on Wednesday, I drove to my child home in the suburbs. Mom had kept the house after Dad died, though she'd remodeled so extensively it barely resembled the place I grew up in. I still had a key. The house was empty. Mom was at a conference in Chicago until Friday. I went straight to the attic where boxes of old documents and photos were stored. If there was evidence of what really happened, it would be there. 3 hours and several dust-induced to sneezing fits later, I found it, an unmarked shoebox hidden inside a larger storage container of Christmas decorations. The photos showed my my mother with two men, Marcus, looking younger and less polished, and another man with dark hair and a wide smile. In one picture, the three of them stood arm in arm in front of what looked like a small office. A handwritten note on the back read, Day 1 of PCM Agency, 1995, PCM. Porter Chen Michels. The journal belonged to my father, Robert Porter, but the entries started in 1997, 2 years after the photo was taken. I flipped through, scanning for mentions of Marcus or the mysterious third man. The 12th of June, 1997. Diane finally told me about James. I am still processing. Agreed to meet the baby tomorrow. Not sure what I am walking into, but I love Diane enough to try. The 13th of June, 1997. Met little Olivia today. She has James's eyes but Diane's smile. 6 months old and already so alert. I held her and something just clicked. I know she's not mine biologically, but I already feel like her father. Diane cried when I said I wanted us to be a family. The journal fell from my hands. My father, the man I'd loved and mourned, wasn't my biological father. Someone named James was, and Marcus, where did he fit in? I grabbed my phone and searched James Michael's 10 gybrations. The results made my blood run cold. A business profile from 1995, 10 gybrations, originally Porter Chen Michels Agency, was founded by Diane Porter, Marcus Chen, and James Michaels. Further down, a newspaper clipping. Locarender James Michaels Deason car accident, 1997. My biological father had died before my father Robert came into the picture, before I was even a year old. Marcus wasn't my father, but he had been my biological father's business partner and based on the photos, close friend. I was so engrossed in this revelation that I didn't hear the front door open when my mother's voice called out, "Pa!" From downstairs. I nearly jumped out of my skin. "Mom, you are back early." She appeared at the attic doorway, still wearing her travel clothes, face grim. "Sheila called me," she said. "Rahat me, you were asking questions." Seems like there were a lot of questions I should have been asking years ago. I held up the journal. Who was James Michaels? Mom's shoulders sagged. She suddenly looked much older than her 53 years. "He was your biological father and Marcus's best friend, and you were all business partners." She nodded slowly. "We started the company together, the three of us, so when Marcus hired me, he recognized your name on the application. He called me, asked if you were James's daughter. I told him yes. And you didn't think to mention any of this to me." My voice cracked with emotion. "You let me build my entire career there without knowing the truth. I was trying to protect you," she said, eyes pleading. "And to hear something else you need to know about Marcus. Something I discovered after your father, after Robert died." Her phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it, face paling. "It's Marcus. He's on his way here now." Mom moved quickly, taking the journal from my hands and returning it to the shoebox. "We don't have much time," she said, voice low and urgent. "Marcus cannot know you found these. Why? What are you afraid of?" She hesitated, weighing her words carefully. After James died, Marcus changed. The grief, it did something to him. He became obsessed with the company, with making it successful in James's memory. "That doesn't explain why you kept all of this from me." "Because I signed an agreement," she admitted, not meeting my eyes. "After the accident, Marcus bought out my share of the company. Part of the deal was that I would never tell you about James's connection to Chen Harborations. So you erased my real father from my life, for my life? For money?" "No." Her response was sharp, defensive. "For your safety. James's death was an accident, Olivia. At least Marcus didn't think so." The attic suddenly felt airless. "What are you saying?" Marcus became convinced that James was killed by a competitor. He had no proof, but he was paranoid, worried they might come after James's family next. "Me pregnant with you. He thought keeping your connection to James secret would protect you." "That's insane," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, pieces were falling into place. The overprotectiveness, the way my mother had discouraged me from using social media growing up, how she'd initially tried to steer me away from marketing as a career. "Maybe it was paranoia," she agreed. "But at the time I was grieving, pregnant, scared. The agreement gave me financial security and a fresh start with Robert. He knew everything and still wanted to be your father." A car door slammed outside. Through the attic window I could see Marcus's sleek black Tesla in the driveway. "Does Marcus know I found out?" I asked quickly. "I don't think so. Sheila just said you were asking questions." The doorbell rang, its cheerful tone incongruous with the tension in the air. "Let me handle this," Mom said. "Stay." I had no intention of hiding in the attic. As soon as she disappeared down the stairs, I followed quietly, staying out of sight but within earshot of the front door. Diane Marcus's voice carried up from the entryway. "We need to talk. This isn't a good time. Marcus, is Olivia here? Her car's outside." "I think she knows something about James." There was a long pause before my mother responded. "What makes you think that? The mean peer agreement?" "It was her idea originally, but suddenly she's hesitant. Then Sheila mentioned she was asking about you, whether you'd ever been to the office." "She doesn't know anything," Mom insisted, "and I'd like to keep it that way." "We had an agreement? An agreement you've already broken?" His tone had hardened. "You weren't supposed to let her work at Chen Harborations at all? That was the condition for the payments?" "I didn't let her do anything. She's an adult who applied for an internship on her own." "What was I supposed to do? Tell her no, without any explanation?" "You were supposed to steer her in a different direction, away from anything connected to James." Their voices were rising now, the pretense of civility slipping away. "I tried for years, I tried, but she's James's daughter through and through. Same determination, same passion for marketing. She found her way to Chen Harborations all on her own, and now she's asking questions, which means you didn't do a good enough job hiding the truth." I'd heard enough. I stepped out from my hiding place on the stairs. "No, she didn't," I said coldly. "But then again, neither did you." Diane Final isn't exactly a secure filing on Marcus. Both of them froze, staring at me like deer in headlights. The tension in the room was unbearable. "You saw the video," Marcus said finally. "I did, and I found Dad's journal. Not Robert, my real father, James." Marcus's expression shifted through several emotions: shock, anger, something like fear, and finally a strange sort of resignation. "You have his eyes," he said quietly. "I noticed it the first day you walked into Chen Harborations, like seeing a ghost." "Why didn't you tell me?" I demanded. "All these years of mentoring me, grooming me to take over the company, was it just guilt? Obligation to your dead friend Marcus?" And my mother exchanged a look loaded with unspoken communication. "It's more complicated than that," Marcus said. "James wasn't just my business partner. He was." My mother cut him off sharply. "Marcus, don't. She deserves to know, Diane. She's not a child anymore. Know what I looked between them. What else are you hiding from me?" Marcus took a deep breath, but before he could speak, his phone rang. He glanced at it and swore under his breath. "I have to take this. It's Tokyo again," he answered with a curt Chen and stepped outside onto the porch. Mom immediately grabbed my arm. "Olivia, listen to me carefully. You need to sign that mentor agreement tomorrow. Act like everything is normal and let me handle this." "Handle what, Mom? What aren't you telling me?" "There are things about James, about your biological father, that even I didn't know until after he died. Things that could still be dangerous. 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 How? This isn't a spy movie. She lowered her voice to a whisper. The company wasn't just a marketing agency in the beginning. They had clients, government clients. That's all I can say right now. Before I could press her further, Marcus re-entered, tucking his phone away. I have to get back to the office, he said, his professional mask firmly back in place. Olivia, I expect to see you there tomorrow morning. We'll finish our conversation then. As he walked out, he paused at the door, and Diane, remember our agreement. The final clause. The door closed behind him with a definitive click. What's the final clause? I asked. Mom sank onto the stairs, suddenly looking exhausted. If the truth about James ever came out, I'd lose everything. The house, the trust fund, all of it. And if I sign that Minor agreement tomorrow, her eyes met mine, filled with fear and resignation, then you are legally bound to Chen Hibervations for the next 10 years, and to Marcus? I barely slept that night, my mind racing with fragments of information, trying to assemble them into something that made sense. By morning, I had more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. I needed to protect myself. I arrived at the office early again, but instead of heading to my desk, I went to the legal department on the 7th floor. Karen Liu, the head counsel, was an intimidating woman who rarely smiled and never minced words. Olivia Porter, she said when I appeared in her doorway. To what do I owe this unexpected visit? I'd like to see a copy of the mentor-tier agreement before the signing ceremony. Karen's eyebrow arched slightly. Marcus hasn't shared it with you. He has. I'd just like to review the final version once more. She studied me for a moment, then nodded, prudent. Have a seat. While she pulled up the document, I casually asked, how long have you been with Chen Hibervations, Karen? Since 2001, Marcus recruited me from Latham and Watkins, not long enough to have known James then. I watched as she printed the agreement and handed it to me. Take your time, I'll be in the conference room down the hall when you are finished. Alone in her office, I quickly scanned the agreement. Most of it was standard confidentiality clauses, non-compet language, compensation details, but tucked into the middle was something unusual. Signatory acknowledges them legal connection to company founder James Michaels and waives all claims to additional compensation, shares, or ownership rights that might arise from said connection. They had rewritten the agreement. This clause hadn't been in the version Marcus showed me last week. Tucked behind it was another bombshell. Signatory agrees to genetic sampling for security clearance purposes to be conducted within 14 days of execution. Genetic sampling, security clearance. What kind of marketing company required DNA tests? I took pictures of these pages with my phone, then returned the document to Karen's desk. All set, she asked when I found her in the conference room. Yes, thank you. Actually, do you know if Marcus is in yet? I should touch base before the ceremony. I believe he's in a meeting with the board. The board wasn't scheduled to meet today. Something was happening. I headed for the executive floor where the boardroom was located. As I approached, I heard raised voices through the door, which was slightly ajar. Can't be a coincidence, someone was saying. First the breach in Singapore, now this. We don't know that she's found anything substantive, Marcus replied. The agreement protects us, unless she refuses to sign. A woman's voice countered. The Porter girl is the only loose end from the Michaels era. If she's discovered her connection and goes public, she won't, Marcus said firmly. I've known Olivia for 5 years. She's ambitious, smart. Once she understands what's at stake, she'll make the right decision. And if she doesn't, a heavy silence. Then Marcus, then we implement the contingency plan. My blood ran cold. I backed away from the door and hurried to the elevator. Whatever was happening was bigger and more dangerous than a simple family secret. Back at my desk, I tried to process everything. Chen Hibervations wasn't just a marketing agency. My biological father hadn't died in a simple car accident, and Marcus, the mentor I'd trusted, admired, even loved like a father, had been lying to me from the beginning. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Did you sign? Not yet, I replied. Ceremony at 11. Wound new clauses, an agreement about James and genetic testing. What the hell is going on? Don Stein coming to you now? 20 minutes later, Sheila appeared at my office door. Marcus would like to see you before the ceremony. I followed her to his office, mind racing through possible strategies, pretend ignorance, confront him directly. Marcus was at his desk reviewing documents. He looked up and smiled when I entered. Ah, Olivia, ready for the big moment? Almost, I said, matching his casual tone. Just had a few questions about some of the new language in the agreement. His smile didn't waver, but his eyes sharpened. New language, the part about James Michaels, and the genetic testing. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he sighed and sat back in his chair. How much do you know? Enough to know that Chen Hibervations isn't just a marketing company. Mudden to know my biological father didn't die in a random accident. Your mother's been talking, not enough apparently. Why do you need my DNA, Marcus? He leaned forward, suddenly intense. Because you are James's daughter, his only child. And James Michaels was not just my business partner. He was a technological savant who developed encryption algorithms that are still being used by intelligence agencies worldwide. This was not what I had expected. What does that have to do with me? Everything. The original servers, the ones containing his proprietary code, are biometrically locked. They can only be accessed by someone sharing James's DNA. The implications hit me like a physical blow. You've been grooming me all these years to get access to my father's work. No, he said quickly. Not just that. You earned your place here. Your success is your own. But the Minstress agreement, the fast-tracking would have happened regardless. You are brilliant, Olivia, like him. Marcus stood circling his desk to stand closer to me. But yes, part of the plan was eventually bringing you into the fold, telling you the truth, asking for your help to access James's final projects. So you've been using me. His expression hardened. I've been protecting you. Those algorithms are worth billions on the black market. People have killed for less. People like whoever was responsible for my father's accident and sex spinal. Something flickered in Marcus's eyes, grief, guilt. I couldn't tell James's death was complicated, meaning, what? Exactly. Before he could answer, his office door burst open. My mother stood there breathless, with Karen Liu right behind her, looking furious. Olivia, don't sign anything, Mom said. We're leaving. Marcus's face darkened. Diane, you are making a mistake. No, the mistake was trusting you all these years. She turned to me. He killed James. Olivia, your father didn't die in an accident. Marcus sabotaged his car because James was going to sell his algorithms to a competitor. The accusation hung in the air like a live grenade. I looked at Marcus, expecting an explosive denial. Instead, he said quietly, it wasn't like that. And in that moment, I knew it was true. The room seemed to tilt sideways. The man who had mentored me, guided my career, who I had trusted absolutely, had killed my biological father. Olivia, Marcus began, his voice unnaturally calm. You have to understand the context. James was unstable in those final months, paranoid. He was going to sell classified algorithms to the Chinese government. You are lying, my mother spat. He was leaving the company because he found out what you were really doing with his work, selling it to the highest bidder, including regimes that used it to track and kill dissidents. I felt like I was watching a tennis match between two people I no longer recognized. How long have you known? I asked my mother. I found James's hidden files after Robert died. That's when I understood why Marcus was so insistent on keeping you away from the company, not to protect you, to keep you from discovering the truth. Marcus's face was a mask of cold fury. And yet you let her apply for the internship? Was that your way of seeking justice? Diane intruding your daughter as a weapon against me? I didn't think she'd get it. There were thousands of applicants, but she did because she's exceptional like her father. Marcus turned to me, his tone softening. Olivia, everything I've done mentoring you, preparing you to lead the company, it's been my way of making amends, I repeated incredulously. You killed my father, and I've spent 25 years building his legacy, making sure his work changed the world for the better. I've kept his daughter safe, made sure she had opportunities, guided her career while lying to her face. My mother interjected. As have you. Marcus shot back. They were both right. Both had deceived me my entire life. Karen Lowe, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. This is becoming a significant liability issue for the company. Miss Porter, I suggest you and your daughter leave the premises immediately. Gladly, my mother said, grabbing my arm. Olivia, we need to go. I pulled away from her. Number. I deserve answers. Real ones. I faced Marcus. If you killed my father, why risk bringing me into the company at all? Why not just reject my application? Because I promised him, Marcus said quietly. The night before he died, we argued about the future of the company. He made me swear that if anything happened to him, I would look after you and your mother, make sure you had opportunities in the industry if that's what you wanted. So this was what? Fulfilling a promise to a man you murdered. It was honoring the memory of my best friend. For the first time, Marcus's voice broke slightly. A friend I lost because of one terrible decision made in a moment of panic. You deliberately damaged his car, my mother countered. That's not a moment of panic. That's premeditated murder. I never intended for him to die. I just needed him incapacitated long enough to secure the servers to keep the algorithms from being sold. The pieces were finally falling into place. The reason for my mother's overprotectiveness, Marcus's interest in my career, the strange clauses in the Meantripper agreement. And now you need me, I said, the revelation dawning. Because the spinal work is locked behind biometric security that only his blood relative can access. Marcus nodded slowly. Yes, but that's not the only reason I've invested in your career, Olivia. You earned your place here, did I? Or did you make sure I got opportunities no one else would have? His silence was answer enough. What's on those servers? I asked. The most advanced predictive algorithm ever created, Marcus said. James called it ECRIL. It can analyze vast data sets and predict human behavior patterns with unprecedented accuracy. And what does Chen Yabayations do with this algorithm? I pressed another pause. We license simplified versions to advertising platforms, social media companies, political campaigns, and the original unmodified algorithm is offered to select government clients for national security applications. My mother made a disgusted sound. That's a sanitized way of saying surveillance and manipulation. It's protected America's interests for decades, Marcus snapped. At what cost? I asked. How many people have been hurt by this technology? Fewer than would have been hurt without it, Marcus insisted. The world isn't black and white, Olivia. James understood that. Don't you dare speak for him, my mother said. You forfeited that right when you sabotaged his car. I had heard enough. The company I'd devoted 5 years to, the mentor I'd admired, the mother I'd trusted, all built on lies and manipulation. I need time to think, I said, stepping back from both of them. Away from here. Away from both of you, Olivia, Marcus called after me as I headed for the door. The ceremony is in 20 minutes. The board is expecting you to sign the agreement. I turned back, looking at him one last time. The man I had once wanted to be. A man who had killed my father and spent 25 years trying to atone for it by molding me into his successor. Tell them I quit. I walked out of his office past Sheila's startled face down the corridor lined with awards and accolades that now felt hollow. I took the elevator to my floor, grabbed my personal items from my desk, and left in ovations for what I thought would be the last time. My mother followed me to the parking garage. Olivia, wait. You need to understand how dangerous Marcus is. We need to go to the authorities. With what evidence? A 25-year-old murder that even you didn't know about until recently. And how exactly would you explain your role in all this, casting money from your lover's killer? She flinched as if I'd slapped her. I thought it was guilt money, Fighter's guilt. I never knew he was responsible, but you suspected, and you still took the payments to protect you, to give you a stable home with Robert, who loved you like his own daughter. I unlocked my car, throwing my bag inside. I need space, Mom. From you, from Marcus, from all of this, where are you going? I don't know yet. Don't follow me. As I drove away, my phone buzzed repeatedly with texts and calls from my mother, from Marcus, even from board members whose numbers I recognized. I ignored them all. I drove aimlessly for hours trying to process everything. My entire life had been built around a central lie. My career, which I had believed was earned through hard work and talent, was at least partially engineered by a man trying to assuage his guilt. By evening, I found myself at the cemetery where Robert Porter, the man who had raised me, who I had called Dad, was buried. I sat by his headstone, tears flowing freely. Did you know the truth? I whispered to the silent grave. About James, about Marcus. Only the wind answered, rustling through the nearby trees. My phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number. James left contingencies, things Marcus doesn't know about. Me tomorrow at the original PCM office building. 10 a.m. Come alone. A friend of your father's. As suspicious as the message seemed, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe there were answers out there that didn't come from Marcus or my mother. Maybe I could finally learn the truth about who James Michaels had really been, and who by extension I was meant to be. The original PCM agency building was now a craft brewery in downtown Boston. I arrived early, parking across the street to watch who came and went. At precisely 10 a.m., an elderly man with a cane hobbled to a bench outside the brewery and sat down. I waited 15 minutes watching. He didn't check his phone or look around impatiently. He simply sat feeding crumbs to pigeons that gathered at his feet. Finally, I approached Esme. I think you might be waiting for me. He looked up, eyes sharp behind thick glasses. Olivia Porter, you look just like him. You knew my father, James Michaels. I recruited him. The man gestured to the bench beside him. Alan Westbrook, former NSA. I sat cautiously. Did you send the text? My granddaughter did. Timology isn't my strong suit these days. He studied my face. James was brilliant. The most natural cryptographer I ever met. He could see patterns where others saw only chaos. Marcus says you were clients of PCM, Alan, snorted Marcus.